Thursday this morning.
Okay.
Tom, just in case we lose you along the way, I'll keep the meeting going because I got the agenda as well.
Great. In that case, I'll see you.
We're live. We're live, Tom.
We're live?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta get my thing back here. Okay, welcome to the April 21st meeting of the Student Life and Athletics Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees. Committee is meeting in person with some members participating remotely. Public access to the meeting is available via YouTube video platform. At this time, I will conduct a roll call to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present when your name is called. Tom Ryan here, David Maritorano,
Present.
Michael Fascitelli,
Present.
Robbie Luna,
Present.
Mike McNally,
Present.
Jay Placencia,
Present.
Hannah Backert,
Present.
Margot Cook,
Present.
Mark Palange.
Present.
Okay, quorum is present. I'll call the meeting to order. Obviously, we're in for the benefit of people in the virtual audience, clearly identify yourself when you make a motion or make a comment. First of all, I'd like to welcome Hannah to the committee. Hannah was appointed to serve on the Board of Trustees as a student representative. She's currently a junior and also a student athlete in the women's rowing team. Go team. She is a major in communications with a double minor in leadership studies and crime and justice and law. Hannah holds positions in the Athletic Advisory Board as a student representative and is the Atlantic 10 representative for the Student Athletic Advisory Committee. She's also an intern for iSTAND, URI Bystander Interventional Program for Sexual Assault on Campuses. As you can tell, Anna is obviously actively involved in the university, not only from an athletic standpoint, but the community as a whole. So, Anna, we're happy you're joining the committee.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, the first order of business is acceptance of the agenda. May I have a motion that the Student Life and Athletics Committee of the URI Board of Trustees accept the agenda for the meeting April 21st?
David Monterano, make motion.
Second, Jay Placencia.
Any discussion? There being no further discussion, I ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, the motion is to accept the agenda of today's meeting. The next item is to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 20th. Do I have a motion?
Mike McDowell, so moved.
Second. Tom Ryan, any discussion on the motion? Being no discussion, we accept the minutes. There may be some discussion. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, any abstentions? Okay, the motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 22nd is approved. Okay, now we have, basically, they're all discussion items on the upcoming, on our agenda. We have to talk about a little bit about the upcoming agendas when we get to the calendar. So there's no votes today for the committee. The first presentation will be the mental health presentation by Ellen Reynolds, who is the interim vice president for student affairs. I can't see you, Ellen, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. Nice to see everybody. Ellen Reynolds here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. And is somebody going to share the presentation? That was my understanding.
It should be.
It's on its way.
Oh, there we go.
Is it up yet? No.
I don't see it.
It's the best.
Is it up for the people that are live?
Just about.
Okay. I don't see it here on mine.
Oh, there we go.
Gentlemen, wonderful. Thank you very much. So again, thank you, Chair Ryan, for this invitation and this chance this afternoon to talk a little bit about supporting the mental health needs of our URI students, certainly before, during the pandemic, and hopefully as we get in through the endemic state. I'd also like to thank all of the trustees on the committee for their ongoing support for student life and athletics at the University of Rhode Island, and also extend my support to Hannah. Thank you for joining the committee. So I'm going to move through fairly quickly, not to take up too much time this afternoon, but I think no surprise to anybody that higher education institutions are increasingly trying to cope with the demand for mental health services that in many cases are surpassing the available supply of traditional mental health services available on our campuses. And this afternoon, I plan to walk through a little bit about, what the current mental health needs are, what supports we have available at the University of Rhode Island, and what we see as the future for the University of Rhode Island as we continue to grow and collaborate to meet the needs of our students. I'd like to just start briefly by saying a terrific shout out to the Health, Counseling, Psychological Consultation Center and others who in March 2020 did a Herculean effort in transitioning to telehealth and teletherapy in little under a week, and ensuring that our students during the beginning of the pandemic had access to virtual services wherever they were in the United States to ensure that there was a seamless and ongoing support of their needs. And that is one of the technologies that we'll move into the future with, which we're excited about being able to continue to meet the needs. So if you could advance the slide. So just to talk a little bit about where we were pre-pandemic, institutions were already showing greater attention to the importance of student well-being. We were putting a lot of effort and energy into prioritizing wellness on our campuses. And we also know that, Generation Z are likely to have received treatment or gone to therapy, according to the American Psychological Association, higher than any other generation before them. They've grown up in a world where it's normal and considered natural to get treatment for psychological problems. And they are likely informed because of social media, right? And their connection to the internet. This is the first generation who's been, their entire life has been connected to an internet. And they have heard stories of strangers and others, celebrities and influencers who have continued to destigmatize mental health and allowed them to encourage them to access support and treatment. Then came along the pandemic, and we saw increased anxiety and depression, students who were really struggling with a lack of motivation and focus, loneliness and isolation, which is no surprise. Difficulty with academics, particularly when we switched to remote and having to be able to do that in an online modality, which was challenging for many of our students, and really the missing out on the traditional and normal experiences. And I'm not only talking about the March 2020 to the end of that academic year, but even in the fall of 2020 when we came back, and much of our services that we provided were remote. So the classes were remote at that point in time. Students were taking food out of the dining hall, so that that sense of loneliness continued. And also the worriedness about the health and well-being of themselves, but also the health and well-being of their loved ones. In fact, the mental health challenges among this generation are so concerning that the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, issued a public health advisory in December of 2020 to address the youth mental health crisis, which is largely exacerbated even further by the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of data. American College Health Association does a national survey on an annual basis, actually twice a year, fall and spring, which recognizes and collects data about students' health habits, behaviors. No surprise to anybody, but 1 in 5 college students surveyed indicated that their mental health had significantly worsened under COVID-19. 80% of college students reported COVID-19 as negatively impacting their health. It went on to talk about the fact that 23.1% experienced depression, which negatively impacted their ability and affecting their academics. 34% experienced anxiety affecting their academics. 23% thought about suicide, and again, almost 50% felt lonely. In order for students to be successful academically, they need to be well, mentally well, physically well, financially well. They need to have their basic needs met. And it's largely incumbent upon universities to work to meet those needs where we can, and where we can't, to partner to make sure that those services and needs are being met for our students. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through just a little bit about some of the services we have available on our campus. I'll start with the four main, I would say, centers that are available. We have a counseling center located on campus. It's located in Roosevelt Hall on the second floor. It works on a brief intervention model where they meet with students and work with them on a goal to try to intervene where they can and provide services to help them deal with whatever issue they might be experiencing. I'll get into a little bit more detail about the services they provide, along with some of these others on subsequent slides. Health Services is a comprehensive ambulatory care center available 7 days a week, has psychiatrists, clinical psychiatric nurse specialists, licensed family practice physicians and nurse practitioners meeting the medical and behavioral health needs of our students as well. And then we have 2 graduate training programs that we're very fortunate to have on campus that serve both the needs of our students and our community members at the Psychological Consultation Center and the Couple and Family Therapy Program. The PCC is located in the Chasey Hall, and the Couple and Family Therapy Program is located in the Transition Center on the Kingston campus. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the Counseling Center. So the Counseling Center, as I mentioned in Roosevelt, has licensed mental health professionals, including psychologists, mental health counselors, social workers, postdoctoral students, student interns, working Monday to meet the mental health needs of our students. Their goal is really to help students effectively manage crisis and personal problems that may be interfering with their academic, personal, and career goals. They do crisis intervention, individual appointments, both in person and virtually, group support. So they have several different groups that run regularly, an LBTG plus women's group, a grad student support group, Success Over Stress. During COVID, they did Living La Vida Lockdown support group that helped our students who were in isolation make a connection. They do services to the providers. Care is going to be beyond what we believe is a brief intervention. It might be a longer term issue. So we work with our community providers, both for inpatient and outpatient services. And they also do outreach events to really focus on topics that are impacting our students, stress management, mindfulness, disordered eating, substance use, suicide prevention, and more. When you look at some of their data, I will tell you, we just took a spotlight on February 2017 data compared to February 2022 data, and no surprise, right? A 60% increase in triage appointments at the Counseling Center. Triage is where students can actually walk in or phone in and get a brief intervention with a licensed clinician who can then set up a strategy for how they're going to maintain and support ongoing needs of the student. We went to triage probably a little bit before 2017 because we didn't have enough appointments available same day. And triage has been highly effective to briefly meet the needs of students and try to work with them to get them into the right level of support that they need depending upon what they're dealing with. Usually meet about a 15, 20-minute appointment where the assessment is done and then the treatment plan is set up. You'll see that we also had a 27% increase in the visits to the Counseling Center during that same period of time. I will tell you that probably should also reflect a 60% increase. But again, due to the lack of available appointments, it's a percent increase, not having the available appointments always. And also students not always needing an appointment and being able to shift to a different tiered approach to meeting their needs has happened. So, and then, of course, 53% increase in self-screenings completed. So no surprise to us, again, students are very comfortable accessing a computer, filling out self-screening and support that way. Many of them come with interventions and activities that they can do to help them manage stress and anxiety and other things that they need to do. Next slide, please. So interesting is that the students at the Counseling Center, they have them fill out a brief survey. And so we took some responses from the week of 1/17/2022 to 2/2/22. But really, we can aggregate that out over most of the time, the responses that we receive from students. And what we observed there, just so you know, the 26% of the students coming through triage endorsed or affirmed that they had suicide ideation in the last 12 months. So that's, concerning. 85% were being seen by the Counseling Center, and 10% of the students needed to be referred to community providers. 3.5% referred to health services for medication therapy to support their intervention. 84% a goal for better management of their anxiety and stress, and 75% of the students reported, again, that their mental health had negatively been impacted by COVID, which is supported by the national data that we've already talked about. Next slide, please. So we did a little benchmarking with other counseling centers to look at our students per clinician ratio, as we routinely do with our services. And for this graph, just so you know, we used undergraduate student data because we know they really are the drivers of the services that we provide. So for all of the comparisons here, it's undergraduate data compared to clinician. And what you'll see is there's certainly an opportunity here for us to potentially add additional staff when resources exist. But I will also tell you that we are struggling, like other centers, to attract talent. So right now, that number that you see for URI is 12 clinicians, but we really have 10. We have 2 vacant positions that we're actively searching for. And so we're seeing an increased demand across the country for people trying to hire quality talent, diverse talent to join their centers. And it's challenging. So we're doing everything we can to work to try to make sure that we can fill the existing positions we have, and then further on look at strategies to increase our capacities to be able to meet the needs of students. I recently heard someone report, and I wish I recall where it came from, that in the last 6 months, there's been more counseling center jobs posted available than there has been in the last 20 years. So that's something to think about. Many of the clinicians working in the community we're hearing have gone to virtual and have not gone back to in-person. And many have also transitioned over to fee for service as opposed to being in network with healthcare with health insurance. So that poses another challenge for us in referring students to community-based providers.
How much of our counseling is done virtually?
Great question. So that's really driven by what the student needs. We have both in-person and remote, but I would say right now it's about a 60-40. I believe that was Tom who asked that question, and I could clarify that to be clear. But we offer both in-person. Some students prefer in-person. Others don't feel they have a secure space where they can have a phone conversation or a virtual session, so they prefer to come in person. And others certainly prefer virtual. Don't want to drive to campus or off campus, or those who's just, it's more convenient for them.
Sorry,
It's certainly a
I ignored
modality
my
we won't
instructions
lose.
by not saying my name. You're right.
No problem, no problem. Next slide, please. So I also want to just highlight that, you know, the counseling center is really a champion in trying to make sure that we meet the needs of all of our community members. So the still right now, when it became vacant, they prioritized it and retitled it to be a multicultural counselor. So again, we want to make sure that our students see themselves in the services that they're receiving on campus and ensure that we have a diverse, talented team to meet all of our students' needs. I will share with you, though, we're on our 4th search for that position, unfortunately, meaning 4th time around without resulting in a hire. And again, it speaks to the fact that the talent is highly sought after. There's many opportunities for people right now, and URI is doing everything we can to look at how we can increase compensation, flexibility, and attract that talent to our team. Along with all other supports, as I talked about, we have a group support group going on right now for LGBTQ women to make sure that we're supporting some of our other diverse groups on campus. So it's a commitment of the counseling center for sure.
Ellen,
Next slide, please.
Tom. Sorry.
Hi, Tom. Sure.
How do we, a lot of what we do in this committee is kind of oversight for many areas, which we'll talk about later, around academic success, athletic success, academic support, the student life experience. But how do we measure these things? How do we, like we cite the emotional well-being of our students. How do you measure how we're doing? Because if we don't, we need to understand that. So at least we need to know if we have a problem, or we're making progress, or we're happy where we are. I mean, I'm sure there's always room for improvement, but I guess the question I have as I look through our charter and look through some of the areas that we're doing, which is going to require you and Thor in the athletics area to show us the metrics that we can agree on and then subsequently share with the board. So don't know if you,
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, Tom. And I will, we look at it in a lot of different ways. So some of us, like the health center, have an accrediting body. So we look at our accreditation standards. We look at our customer service and what we're hearing from our students. Are they getting in access to treatment and services in a timely manner where they can have good academic success and well-being, and looking at a lot of different areas to try to measure if we're meeting the needs of our community, and how we're doing with that. So I think it's a good point in looking at how do we, assess what we're doing and showing that it's having an impact. I think one of the ways that we look at it also is, who isn't able to complete the semester because we don't have access to services? Where can we have other partnerships, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment? How we know that we can't do it all at URI, right? We have to have these partnerships, not only for inpatient services, but all other types of services. And with this generation, we have to have different ways of meeting needs. Traditional services are not going to satisfy this generation. And so we're really diversifying the way that we're delivering these services.
it would be good.
So I think it's a
It would be
combination of all of
good.
those.
This is Tom again. It would be good if maybe at the June meeting, you kind of laid out some of the metrics that you look at so that the committee could understand it, whether it's the accreditation credentials or wait times, or I don't know what they are, but something that we can at least have a handle on how we're doing. Resident,
Yeah.
I don't know what do we do any surveys for resident life experience, and how do they feel about the dorms? And I don't.
We do. And we do customer service feedback for students who came in. Did they get access? Were they satisfied? Did they have the education they needed? So we do
Okay.
those type of assessments that happen. I'd be happy to share that information.
That'd be great to have.
Certainly.
We'll put that on the agenda.
Absolutely. Okay, terrific. Next slide, please. So the next slide really just talks to the fact that, we can't just provide traditional services, and that we have to look at alternative models to increase access and provide services. So I'm going to go through in the next couple of slides some of the collaborations that we have put in place so far, and some that we're hoping to advance even further so that we have the ability to meet the needs of all of our students. So next slide, please. Just a bit about the health center. So the health center also meets the behavioral health needs of our students, right? So we have students who come in for psychiatry services and psychiatric clinical nurse specialist. Those are often for prescribing visits where we're able to augment their treatment with pharmacology interventions when it's indicated. It's certainly a lower number than those that need therapy, but it is available to help our students. So we fill prescriptions there. We also know that it's critically important that we screen people for depression. The data tells us that oftentimes people seeking medical care have a known depression or have a depression and it hasn't been identified yet. And these are great opportunities to do that. I'll talk about an upcoming collaborative right now on an annual basis. We screen about 500 people. Those are people coming in for our wellness visits. So physical exams and the like. But we're going to work towards a goal to be screening everybody who comes into the health center, which is on average 150 to 170 people a day, to try to make sure that we identify them. But the key with that is when you identify somebody who screens positive, you need to have the resources to make the referral to ensure that they can engage in care and treatment. And again, just further, I wanted to articulate the newest data from ACHA Fall 2021 articulates that the top 4 reasons that impacting students' academic success are stress, anxiety, depression, and sleep difficulties. So this is definitely something that we need to continue to address and be aware of. Next slide, please. Moving on to the PCC, the Psychological Consultation Center. It's a highlight on our campus available. It's the graduate training program for psychology students, and they not only service URI and our community, but the community around us. They offer individual treatment, assessment. They also have a specialty clinic for children with anxiety. They really focus on having affordable and accessible access to care. They don't charge third-party insurance, and they certainly have a relationship not only with counseling and health, but they have a relationship with URI athletics to meet the needs of our Division I athletes, to ensure that our student athletes have access as soon as possible to meet their needs and allow them to be successful in their sport and their academics as well. Next slide, please. So just to highlight a few of the campus-wide and beyond connections that we've made is We've worked very closely with Healthy Body, Healthy Minds of Washington County. It's a collaborative community effort to really address the mental health and physical health needs of our community and also the social conditions that affect good health. And so one of the things that we have is our mental health first aid program for higher education. Really proud of the fact that we have we have staff who are trained in providing educational resources to departments, student orgs, groups. Many departments have gone through this training, and it allows individuals to recognize somebody who might be having a mental health condition, listen, support, and then make a referral for them. So it really encourages a community-wide approach to identifying somebody who might be having a struggle, making an appropriate referral. In addition to that, we have Zero Suicide. That also is part of a SAMHSA grant, a $2 million SAMHSA grant, in which URI Health Services, as I mentioned, will move to doing a depression screening for all students accessing services. The data is really clear that it's critically important to identify people when they come in for medical care and appropriately refer them for mental health services when it's indicated. Protocol is our 24/7 access to a clinician. So when you call the counseling center during normal hours, you'll get a receptionist who will put you through to the appropriate clinical support. But after hours, we have clinicians that we contract with who answer the phone 24/7. They're able to do a crisis intervention if necessary. On rare occasions, probably 5% or less, they can call EMS, URI EMS, and access emergency services. And then oftentimes it's really just articulating what services we have available, how students can access them during what hours and regular supports. And then they provide information to the counseling center the next day so we can do follow-up and make sure that we haven't missed anybody.
How do the,
A new
how do the
contract.
students, Ellen, this is Tom. How do the students know about protocol?
Great question. So lots of social media, university announcements. When they actually phone the number connects them through to protocol after hours. So it's an automatic connection. But Tom, one thing I didn't say and I should have said is it's not only for students. We've had our public safety and police officers call it when they needed help with a student. We've had RAs call for students. We've had health services call for students. So it is open to all to call and access a consultation, a phone consultation with a clinician.
Right.
The latest contract we just signed was with Together All, and this is another form of support for our students, and it's an anonymous support group, virtual. So essentially, students with the uri.edu email can log into Together All. In 60 seconds, they create an account, and it allows them to go in and receive support for any issue that they might be dealing with. So whatever they feel like they're struggling with, they can go in and talk with peers, get some support. We have some students who have gone in because they're actually having a good day and wanted to be the people who provided some support to their peers. So it works in both ways. They can give support and receive support. It is anonymous, and there's also a licensed clinician in the room who's monitoring the activities to make sure that it's safe, a safe way for students to access and receive care. We also became a JED campus. Just so you know, we joined 350 other institutions across the campus about 4 years ago to develop a strategic plan. We did a national assessment of our own. Back to Tom, how do we assess? A national assessment of what our services were like, where we were missing, what our students felt we needed. And that really has been the conduit for us developing a strategic plan and engaging in many of these other services that I'm talking about, because students told us they don't just want to have one point of access. They want to have multiple different accesses depending upon what's going on for them. I will also tell you that we're not done. We need more. We know that. And part of that is also developing a comprehensive mental health service that goes even beyond that. I'm working with Dr. Corey Clark, who's the director of the Counseling Center, on another new approach that many institutions are using because, again, hard to attract and hire, retain, is looking at contracting for services that offers a further extension of your on-campus resources. So whether that be virtual or in-person sessions, it can also be psychiatric prescribing, but it's also meditation, mindfulness apps, wellness hub, navigators to help individuals find resources and get there. So we're looking at that as an extension and a next step to continuing to engage in resources. Next slide, please. And my last slide is a point of pride, and that is that we are currently engaged with Canon Design to build a new integrated health and counseling center. And this will really allow us to prioritize student well-being and allow for a one facility, state-of-the-art, to meet the students. Critically important, not only because, you know, counseling is housed in a 1930s former dormitory, and health is in a 1950 building with a 25-year-old trailer attached due to space issues. But it's going to allow faculty, staff, students, supporters one place to call and access services, destigmatized, quality, integrated, with the ultimate goal of supporting student success and wellness. So huge thank you to former Vice President Collins and now to President Parlange for championing this over the finish line. It really speaks to the institution's value of student wellness. So for those of you who are a little bit familiar with campus, that bold green line, I don't know if you see it, is actually what we term the elephant walk. It's the main artery leading up from the residence area through campus. And the counseling and the Integrated Health and Counseling Center will be right off that. And it is, we're still in the very early stages, but it's a 3-story, really focused on health, counseling, health promotion and wellness. There'll be a little health area outside where we can do some outside programming. And we're really excited about that on our campus. And that is my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Any questions from committee members?
Tom, this is Mike. The funding for that center, we submitted that ARPA, didn't necessarily get it, but we're still working on.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the ARPA ask. It's a clear priority. We don't know actually when the ARPA interviews will happen. We suspect early next month. We thought that would be the end of this month, but yeah, it's a priority for us. So maybe I could also mention that we have done a number of tours on campus of various representatives and leadership in the state, and we always bring them to the health center so they can see students sitting on the floor in the waiting room, or the smell of skunk in the trailer out the back, or I don't know what other highlights I should point to, Alice. But,
Hey, Ellen, the last time we talked, I think we heard there was a 4 to 5 week wait to get a counseling appointment. Has that been reduced at all?
Yeah, so I would say at this point in time, it's that would bring us to the end of the semester, and that is pretty much where we are right now, just so you know. So students, the access that students have are to the same day triage appointments that we talked about, and getting them in that way. And then what we're doing is those brief visits, those 20 and 30-minute appointments again, if we need to. At the same time, trying to hook people up with support groups and other means to support them during this period of time. But yes, we do still have a backlog. And again, we have 12 clinicians, but we're down 2. We're actively recruiting and have been recruiting. It's not for a lack of trying to find the talent. It's a tough market to be hiring in right now.
This is
And
hard.
that's why we're actively looking at that relationship where we can augment our staff with other staff. Dr. Clark has actually brought in clinicians from the community who are working with us on an internal payroll situation to try to augment us where we can. So we're doing all we can to try to improve access.
Ellen, excuse me, this is Jay Placencia. Do staff, faculty have access to counseling center as well?
They do not. Great question. The counseling center is students. The faculty and staff can use the PCC or the couple and family therapy program, but they are not able to use the student counseling center.
It's a tough rock, right? It's a national problem. It's a societal problem, but we have to just make sure we're at least doing all we can, and we're not falling behind anywhere. If it's a structural issue because of we can't get people, that's one issue. But if it's some items that we haven't uncovered or we're not doing properly, I know you're working hard at it. I'm not suggesting that, but it's only a problem when it becomes a problem. And I'm sure parents are keenly aware of this, and it's kind of it affects student engagement, right? It's what we're kind of sort of our charter, what we do for when a parent sends a student to us for education and rounding, and healthcare is mental health, and healthcare is one of our responsibilities. So I know the center will help. So But it would be good at the June meeting if you just think about all the metrics that you have around whether it's accreditation or student surveys and dorms, dining. It would be good for us to see it just to get a benchmark of how we're doing if we have any other information or vis-a-vis our peers, so that we can all be on the same page and kind of help you get to where you need to be. And our students.
Certainly, I'd be happy to look at that and provide across the division where we can, where we have some measurable
Okay.
data.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd just say to that, Tom, is that I think probably 10 years ago in our community, we had much more access and the ability to work with people within the community. And it's Rhode Island is a desert right now, and specifically in South County, having access to even partner is almost non-existent. So it is incumbent upon us to be able to meet the needs because we don't have the resources elsewhere that are easily accessible for our students.
Right. It's a compounded problem. Okay, any other questions from committee members? All right, thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I can't see Thor in the room for athletics update.
Right here, Tom. Thank you.
Okay. How can I miss you?
Thank you. We can go to the athletic slide. That would be great, or presentation. And as we're pulling the presentation up, I'll just get started quick. Talking to Tom and to the president, really thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to talk through the two major basketball contract situations and coaches commitments that we've made and coaches have made to us over the last couple months. Certainly a very exciting time as we talk about our basketball programs. And so we made two significant as I said, commitments. One to Tammy Reese, our women's basketball coach, who's just finished her third year, and then to our new coach, Archie Miller. And we'll start with Tammy. If we go down 2 slides, please. Next one, right there. What we did, what Tammy's done, since she's been here in 3 years, is she's really taken over a program that was at the bottom of the Atlantic 10 and had been for many, many years. Maybe not at the absolute bottom, but pretty darn close. Tammy came to us as an assistant at Syracuse, and really from day one, with the new energy and passion and style of play, has really helped us to achieve some things in our women's program that had never been accomplished before. I don't mean to insult you by reading some of this, but it is, I just think, incredibly impressive, especially as you compare to the past. Tammy did not take over a successful program. I can't emphasize that enough. She took over a program that was constantly struggling. But in just a short period of time, her second year, won A10 Coach of the Year, overall record of 46-31, which is the best winning percentage in program history, 29-16 in A10 play, qualified for an NIT this past year and won 22 games this year. And we actually received votes in the top 25 poll, but I can promise you that's never happened before. So that was really exciting. And you could see the level of interest in the fan base. The last 2 games of the year, we ended up with some great crowds, and we certainly think we can build upon that. Again, great tribute to Tammy and her engagement in the community, but also the success of her players. Next slide, please. So wanted to talk about the contract because, again, it's a significant commitment and there may be some questions as to thought process behind it. But I want to thank, President Parlon for his support in both of these initiatives, as well as, Margo and Tom and Mike and others. It was just really, really important. Couldn't have done it without the university's commitment behind it. But as we look through Tammy's contract, 10 years, someone will say, why? Why 10 years? That's a significant amount of time. It really is. We knew that going in. We also wanted to make a statement that she is one of, I think, 2 coaches in the country that have a 10-year contract. Not only does that mean that we are committed to her, it means she's committed to us. We included in that 10-year contract $1 million buyout that gets reduced by $100,000 a year. So she leaves us after 3 years. There's a $700,000 commitment back to the URI from whoever she goes to coach for. That's pretty standard in terms of a buyout, but not at that level, certainly as it relates to women's basketball in the A10. We've increased her salary. When we hired her 2 years ago, she was literally at the bottom of the A10 in terms of salary at around 185,000. Last year, we jumped that up to 300. This year, we went to 425. It's interesting. She's still, this year, that would place her second in the A10. But I think that, as you can imagine, other coaches are already starting to talk, and other ADs in the league are getting angry with me. And then we did build in for the first 5 years that if she does win 20 games or more, that we would add another year and also increase the buyout by another year. So 20 wins is a good measurement, certainly on the women's basketball side. Now we were really close to making the NCAA tournament this year. A couple of tough losses late kept us out. We also increased the salary pool. One thing, again, to Tammy's credit, that assistant pool is really important. She loves her staff. They've been with her since day one, and they've done a great job in terms of not only coaching our students, but also going out and getting great talent. And then as part of, and when I talk about a little bit of what we did for Archie Miller, we also felt it was important to increase her travel budget from a gender equity perspective to make sure that we are chartering. Basically, the thought process was if we know we're going to Philadelphia or beyond, we're not going to think about it, we're going to charter. And that's the thought process behind that number. We'd actually already received a $125,000 a year gift for the next now 4 more years from a donor to help start up the charter process. The university's we've already budgeted for some of that, but this now brings it to a different level. So I think that's important. Next slide, please. Just again, we thought it would be good to see some of the national exposure that we got with the recognition from Andy Katz and Don Staley, who just won the national championship. Holly Rowe, hopefully many of you have heard, who's a sideline reporter in the NBA, WNBA. And then Coach Yo is the head coach at Ole Miss, who happens to be an alum of URI and just a wonderful person. But just a lot of excitement around that extension. There's risk associated with extending someone from that long. We get it, we know it, but we also know, and looking and evaluating, Tammy had 3 or 4 different opportunities this year. She's been very transparent with me and communicating those things with me. We know that she's a hot commodity, and felt strongly enough. I felt strongly enough to make the recommendation that it's worth it. And again, when someone does something that no one has ever done before in such a quick period of time and doing it the right way and embracing the overall community, I think there's incredible value there. Next slide, please. Attention she brings. We've raised more money around women's basketball than we've ever done. Not even close with around the program. We just did our first phase of a locker room renovation that looks great. And we just actually, I signed right before I came here, the phase 2 commitment, which is another $125,000 campaign to go towards the women's locker room renovation. So that's great. I mentioned the $625,000 commitment that was made by one donor around the program. And then we've also, again, let me say this, Tammy has increased our donors and Garrett Waller and his staff went from 40 to 993 in the past 2 years. So
Hey, Thor, this is Tom, is that charter gift, Women's Excellent Fund, is that a anonymous gift?
it was, yes, it is. It's anonymous from a former men's basketball side donor.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, Phil, this is David. Can you talk a little about student activity? You know, when you go to the Ryan Center and you have students there, have we made an outreach in terms of trying to get the student body there to the women's basketball games to show support there? Is anything being pushed on that side?
We really have. That's a great question, Dave. Really trying to make sure we're putting financial support behind this marketing initiatives for women's basketball. Our fan base tends to be families, more so than the undergraduate students, but you can start seeing a lot of our student athletes that are going to games. I think that's our first focus. We have 500 student athletes. They're not all coming, but it's certainly near the end of the year, we're getting anywhere from 50 to 150 student athletes at games, which is great. But the crowd growth certainly makes it more of a thing to do. So the more people that we can get there, I think more people will have fun and be part of it. So it's a big initiative from our marketing staff for sure. We're also trying to really co-brand and co-market between the men's side and the women's side, since they're playing at the same times basically. So it allows us to get more of a bang for a buck. Any other questions around women's basketball?
Yes, if we make it's Tom Ryan, if we make the NCAA playoffs, what do our revenues look like versus the men's?
Thanks, Tom. There is no distribution on the women's side.
Here you go.
Yeah, what Tom's referring to is, yes, when you play, it all comes from the TV package that's just geared towards the men's CBS deal. So if you play in the men's tournament, it equates to, in the A10, everybody's different, but in the A10, it works out to be about $160,000 per game that you play in. But again, over 6 years, so each year for 6 years. On the women's side, the TV package doesn't build in that same level of support. So great, I'm glad you asked that question, Tom. Thank you.
Anybody like raise that issue
It-
with the, and who would you raise it with?
It would probably be an NCAA conversation, but I think the way the TV packages are so separate, because one's the CBS deal, one's an ESPN deal, they're just not bringing in the same dollar amounts for the overall support of the championship. Yeah, I think, again, as women's basketball continues to grow, hopefully it'll grow along with it.
Yeah, I follow basketball pretty aggressively. I think it's becoming a lot more. There's been a lot of stuff on the basketball side pointing out like some of the things that data will get. Like not so much revenues, but just the perks of the March Madness and things like that. So it's definitely getting national attention.
We talked about that a lot in the A10. I don't know if you heard on the screen, but Dave was basically making a comment about support of women's basketball versus the men, especially as around the championship. Last year, that was really blown up by a women's basketball player from Oregon.
Yeah.
So the A10 has made a very, very strong commitment to make sure that we're focusing on equity. And when you look at our women's programs, they'll say one of the biggest things that they want to do is make sure they're playing their A10 championship at a neutral site. So we've made a 3-year commitment to play at a NBA G League facility in Delaware. This past year was our first year. It was great, but it was really much more of a championship feel. That's just one small example of, we're not just going to play the men's tournament in Brooklyn or in Washington, and the women's tournament on campus.
Right. Well, nice job locking her down. That was a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited. And you know what? She's excited too. She's very excited to be here and loves it here. And, as she went and did talk to a couple other schools, and I don't think she mentioned it, so I don't think I'm speaking out of school. She just felt like this fit and the appreciation of the university wanting her here meant a great deal. And the welcoming for her and her family.
Who do we beat up?
I'll tell you tonight. Good question. That's right. That's right.
Very good.
Next slide, please. All right. So certainly very excited about announcing Archie Miller as our next men's coach. Again, I can't thank enough the president and Margot and Tom and Mike and others just to allow us to move forward at a much different level in terms of attracting a coach like Archie to come here to URI. It's exciting. And so next slide, please. A little bit of his background. He was really the primary target when we knew we were making a change, made a change to see if we could attract him to us as attractive as he was to us. Great success in Dayton, winning 2 A10 titles, 4 NCAA championship appearances. He made the Elite 8 one year, was A10 Coach of the Year. And he was the 2015 finalist for the National Coach of the Year award. And left Dayton after incredible success, went to Indiana. In the COVID year, would have gone to the NCAA tournament. But with the tournament canceled, they kept him out. And then they decided to make a change. And so he sat out last year and, really had a great interest in URI because of, I think, who we are and the fact that he looked at us and said, wow, you know what, over 40 years, they've had great success. It hasn't been just a one-hit wonder. And so we, felt the level of support, we can do it. When I talk about the level of support and what we're doing, what we did is we went and shared with a number of folks in this room and some folks not here today, but just to say, hey, we think in order to find a great coach, we need to be in the top 3 anyway, average of what people are spending in certain criteria in the Atlantic 10. We focused on recruiting, we focused on team travel, we focused on salaries, both on the head coach and the assistant coach's salaries. And we were able to do that. We talked about the practice facility renovation of West Gym that brought us to a different place. It wasn't any more of what we hoped to do, is what we're going to do. And I kept saying that over and over again. And that was really important. In the conversation from the time we made the change to the time we hired Archie and made it public was about 7 days. A great credit to Lauren Jensen, who worked nonstop. Everything she was doing, I felt like, to deal with me for hours on end with putting this contract together, and again, so many others. So it was a great process to go through. His contract, again, I wanted to put that out there. Again, we made that very public. Next slide, please. And it's to talk through what our commitment is as a university. And so, we've made a commitment to put him near the top of the A10, not at the top, but near the top. In terms of his salary, we've increased his assistant coach's salary pool. He's hired a great staff. And again, his buyout, it's only 5 years versus 10, but is also at $1 million starting point that does reduce each year. If we can go to the next slide, there should be a video that I think you can play on that. I hope we can. Oh, okay. Well, it was really just some of Archie's comments, and what he was focusing on was the level of support from the board to the president, to the AD, to the coach, to make sure that, again, it was all really top to bottom. We were all into doing things the right way and putting ourselves in position to win championships. Again, it's not the thing. One of the things that I love most about talking to him during one of our conversations is when he said, "I'm not coming there to be in the top 3 in the Atlantic 10. That's the expectation. I'm coming there to win this stupid thing, and I'm going to win a lot higher than that." I thought that was great. That's what we all want. And we're making the investments to allow us to do that. And I know it's a lot of money. I know it's a steep commitment. But as we've said, and we know, basketball is incredibly important. And to be able to stand up on a mountaintop and say we're a basketball school, and having the support of the president, the board, allows us to not just say it, but do it. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I know that the results will be very, very strong in the near future. So that's these last the last month of our lives in terms of basketball and focus. But love to answer any questions that people have.
Thor?
Yes.
If I could, this is Mark. I have to say, Lauren, you did an incredible job. I did read sort of from what I could understand, the contract, very complicated. And on that Thursday evening, it was like, Thor, when am I going to get to sign? Well, so we probably, but anyway, thank you. Yeah, and I have to say, awesome athletic director to be able to both get Tammy for the long term to see that, and to Archie, that was big. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Probably the recruiting classes for both the men and women's basketball team.
So we lost some great players on the women's side, for sure. And but Tammy's had 2 kids sit out this year, or 3 kids sit out this year that were redshirting. And her recruiting class coming in, she feels really strong about, but even better in the 2003 class. So long term, we feel really good. And short long term, on the women's side. So I think we'll be strong. We may take a step back because we lost 2 really great players. And we lost the graduate. Yeah. And so Manu Tahan, I should have mentioned, actually is our first player ever to sign the contract with the WNBA team. So she signed with the team that just won the WNBA championship, Chicago. So fingers crossed that she can stick with them, but that's pretty exciting. But then Tammy feels great about some of the kids coming in, and even just the recruiting, the transfer portal now that you hear so much about is going to be a big part on the women's side. On the men's side, we did we lost some players to the portal, which was not a surprise. But then we have one commitment that was just made, a transfer from within the league. Not sure I'm allowed to say publicly what his name is yet, but you can all go online and find it out. But he was the first team, a rookie, all rookie player and a great shooter. And they've just been going nonstop recruiting now. We got to hit the portal for sure. That's where we're going to get a lot of players for this coming year. But I like Archie's approach. It's not rushing. It's finding the right fit. Because as he said in his press conference, if you make an error, you really have an error for a while. And we know this next year could be a little bit of a challenge as we build up players. But having him re-recruiting Malik Martin and Ish Leggett to stay was really big. Jalen Carey and Sebastian Thomas as well. So, I think we have a good core of really, committed young men, and they'll go out and find some other players, short term, and then really spend some time. He wants to get high school kids too. That's a real hard problem. Those are the players that are really going to get hurt with this transfer portal. But
Is there a specific region of the country that we're looking?
yeah, we're very lucky because of where we're located. Obviously, the New England prep schools are big. Kenny Johnson, who we just hired, has a real strong connection with the DMV area. And then another, Dwayne Woodward, who just came from Seton Hall, connected very, very well in New York and in Philly. So, we have that East Coast connection really strong. And then obviously Archie from the Midwestern background, but he's from Pittsburgh and recruited all over the country. So they're very well respected.
Thanks.
Hey, Thor, this is Tom. How has it been received with the rest of the athletic department?
Very strong. A lot of excitement, Tom. Great question. We learned a long time ago to not just pretend that we're not a basketball, that we're a basketball school. We really want to talk about it and explain it and then understand the rationale why a successful basketball program benefits every sports team we have. So I've had 5 or 6 coaches, right after the press conference come up and say, congratulations, great hire. We're excited. Very, very genuine and very supportive.
Great. I'd like to just add my congratulations to Mark. You did a great job in the short period of time you were prepared, and equally as well with Tammy, who clearly deserved it. And I've actually talked to her, and she was very excited, and she's excited to work with Archie. And she said, I couldn't be happier. So it's great.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Any other comments from committee members? Okay, Thor, at the next meeting, the June meeting, we're going to talk about the strategic plan, I guess, right? Talk about the kind of the mission and the metrics.
Yeah, we can go through the mission and the metrics of where we've been with our original plan, and then certainly we can talk a little bit about some of what our focus is hopefully going to be on the university plan as we're working our way through it.
Okay, I'd also like to have just an update on where we are with NCAA compliance issues.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay, the next item I think is the charter. So we've discussed this before, and I mentioned this in my earlier remarks. I don't know if you can pull up the charter or you have it in front of you. I'll just read the purpose of this committee is the Student Life and Athletics Committee assists the board in oversight of matters relating to student conduct, residential and social life, extracurricular activities, food services, health, and other such matters relating to student affairs. Committee also assists the board in overseeing athletic policy programs, both intramural, intercollegiate, consistent with the mission. Here you go. You have it right here. So as you go through it, I'm not going to go through each piece, but it does beg the question around metrics on how we measure these things. So I think as a committee, you can talk about this at the next meeting in June. What do we really want to see, and then how do we communicate it to the board to make sure that we're making progress in all these levels? And some of it's got some HIPAA issues, I'm sure, with student life, but it would be good to know how our students feel about dining, how our students feel about residences. We're always going to talk about the budget and facilities in upcoming meetings, but it's the kind of the softer issues around student engagement, student support, academic support, How are our student athletes doing? We talked a little bit about that in the past. So that's one of the areas I'm focused on. The other thing I would add is on the university liaison at the bottom of our charter, we also added Dean Labudi and the diversity officer. So we have VP of Student Life, Director of Athletics, Diversity Officer, and Dean Labudi. Any comments, questions, thoughts?
Tom, it's Margaret. Do we have, I can't remember if we've had students come to this committee and, it's brand new, so we haven't. I don't think we've had students come except for the June offsite to give us their feedback. And maybe we access some of the, like some people on athletics, some people in some of the, clubs that they, like, whoever the leadership is, give them an opportunity to come and talk to the board.
Yep.
But I think mostly we get, the staff reporting, which is great, but I think it'd be, to your point, let's hear right from students on, and maybe give them some particular topics to talk about.
Okay, great. We can do that.
One of the things
And we have our student representative that's very close to that.
I didn't want to put her on the spot the first meeting.
I know.
But you give us some work, that's good.
Yeah.
Thomas, Thor, one of the things that we've done for the last 2 or 3 years when we present to the faculty senate is actually have 2 members of our student athlete advisory committee actually do the presentation.
Oh.
And so we could do that again.
That'd be great.
To our report card here in June as to sort of, hey, here's where we are and what we've done. But it also would be a great chance for the subcommittee to be able to ask the board questions. I mean, ask the students questions and so forth.
That'd be great. I'd love to see them, to Margot's point, maybe present to us. I think we're going to be doing it virtually at this point. We're making some changes in committee meetings, but it'd be great if they could come to the board meeting, and that would be a great committee report out.
Terrific.
Okay, cool.
Tom, if I could, Mark again, so the other thing, just thinking a little bit out loud here, I met this morning with the new student president for the student senate. So she would be great. I think she really wants to engage.
Okay.
So,
Who is that?
like everything, I remember everybody's
That's okay.
first name is Grace, and then
Okay.
her last name,
Yeah.
Kiernan,
Kieran.
Okay.
Karen?
Kieran.
Kiernan, yes, yep.
Okay, oh, yes, in fact, I met with Ellen and Grace this morning, and then, so thanks, Ellen. And then, one thing, you mentioned intercollegiate athletics, intramurals, but intercollegiate. There is a huge number of students also, and Ellen, that are doing the hockey team, the men and women's hockey team, men and women's lacrosse, men and women's rugby, had to get that in. There were a few other, and then there's sort of student that are very involved, for example, in undergraduate research, students involved with music, theater. I'm just wondering how we could see, because the richness of the university, I am well aware of it. I'm not sure that the board is well aware of what actually goes on at URI. It's pretty amazing. So.
Well, we should maybe, Thor, maybe we put that on one of our agenda topics on the kind of intramurals, where we are with other, not only the NCAA events or the Division I, but the intramurals.
And that falls right under student affairs, the club sports and intramurals program. So I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, Ellen, but I'm sure that's something that you all would have all the tracking information on.
Oh, absolutely. And Student Senate, maybe we could do a panel where we picked, 5 or 6 students and they could talk to student life and be available for questions
I love that.
from a diverse group. Okay,
Great.
sure. Thor and I will put that together.
Good.
Great.
Tom, I just have one quick thing. I got to run for the finance committee, but I just want to emphasize the support for metrics, because we've talked about that. And, maybe in this world, there's less metrics than we're used to in our prior world,
Yeah.
So it may be just a personal bias on my path and be more math than English. But one of the things is how, we know what the records are in the basketball season at the end of the year. We know, but some of these measurements of student happiness and contentment or the health stuff or,
Right.
even other athletic stuff, I think it'd be helpful for Ellen and Thor to come back and just get a set of metrics, even if it's imperfect. And I think all the committees, Margot and Tom, Mike, you're there, should strive to figure out the metrics are right for that thing, because I think there's generally a lack of metrics and understanding. And absent that, I think it's hard to measure progress. So I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So we'll start that process in the June meeting with the metrics that come back. I couldn't agree more. Okay, and last, I think we have the calendar. So for the June meeting, we have the strategic plan, mission, and metrics update. And then we're going to get the update on compliance program, and then we'll have the student life metrics that we talked about earlier with Ellen. The September meeting, I think we still have to set that. The September, November meeting, we still have to set it, but it talks about facility updates, housing updates, safety and security of students on campus. So I guess we'll lay that agenda out. We'll have that before the September, November meeting. If there's anything that committee members want to see specific, just send it to Michelle, and we'll put it on the agenda. Or Margot or Mark, if you have something, or Mike, you have something specific that you would like to see, either in the athletic side of it or student life. I mean, I'm personally interested in seeing what's happening with student engagement and dormitory life, and are we doing all we can to help the students there? So, okay. Anything else? Okay. Let's see. I think I gotta read what I have to do here. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Jay Placentia.
Second, David Morano.
Ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. No opposed? Okay, the next meeting, tentatively, the next meeting is June 23rd, but hold fort, that may change slightly after our morning discussion. So we may have a committee meetings a few days before the board meeting and separate them a little bit so that we can fly in one night and fly out the next night. More to come.
Well, virtual. Right, Tom, the virtual committee meetings.
Yeah, virtual. Yeah, virtual. Sorry. Yeah, virtual committee. Sorry. Correct. Okay. Can we stay on this for the next one, or we have to sign off and come back on? For risk.
I know.
You have to sign off.
Sign off. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
No, risk is the other building.
Oh, wait, the other.
Which
No.
in this room?
This is governance.